Okay, 12.1, finding limits. So the first one, they're asking you to complete the table of values below and above the limit we're looking at, x equals 2. So when we plug in 1.9 to our function, what did we end up getting? 0.204.
0.204?
Okay, and then 1.99. Right, so we're getting closer and closer to, looks like about 0.2, right? So let's try it from the top side down. Right, so we plug these values in. So we can see from the top and the bottom, looks like we're approaching about 0.2 or 1/5. So the limit of this function as I approach 2 is 1/5. Questions on that one? Nothing? Next, they've given us a graph, and they want us to name the function at some different locations. So the first one says, limit of f of x, so our graph, as x approaches 0. So when x equals 0, right, our function is continuous, and about what value do we see when x equals 0? 3. So y equals 3, so that is my limit when x approaches 0. So from the left and from the right, my function is approaching 3, so my limit is 3 when x approaches 0. B, x approaches 3, and when that little negative sign above it means I'm approaching 3 from the negative side. Okay, so if I'm approaching x equals 3 from the negative side, what value am I approaching?
4.
4, right? So from the negative side, okay, I'm going to approach 4. Then it says x approaches 3 from the positive side. Okay, so from the positive values of x, I'm approaching 3. What's my x value going to be there? 2.
What's that middle dot?
Okay, so our function has to be defined, right? It has to be continuous. So this dot here is when x equals 3, I get just 3. Okay, but when x is, so I basically have 3 different functions here. I have a function that gives me this line here, where x is less than 3, right? I'm not including this point. This one, when x is 3, y is 3. So it's basically just telling you if x is 3, y is 3. And then this one is a different function saying if x is greater than 3, I get this function. Okay, so it's a piecewise function. Basically have 3 functions in one. Then it says, okay, limit as x approaches 3. So if I approach 3 from the negative side and approach 3 from the positive side, am I approaching the same number? No. Right? So from the negative side, I'm approaching 4. From the positive side, I'm approaching 2. So when I get to x equals 3, I don't have a limit. It's undefined. Because from the negative side and the positive side are not meeting at the same number. So it's undefined. Does not exist. And then they say, well, what is f of 3? So if I plugged a 3 in to f, what value do I get back? This is kind of what we just talked about. Right, so you're going to get 3 back. So there's not a limit at 3, but there's a value at 3, if that makes sense. So if I substitute a 3 into my function, it's going to spit out a 3, because y equals 3. But if I try to take the limit as x approaches 3, I don't have a limit as x approaches 3. Is that making sense to everyone? Okay. David, have we come to your question yet?
Kind of. It was like the piecewise, and it was like you're dropping off. It went like this, and came down for the half of a parabola. I was kind of messing me up, like how like it drops down and open and close circles and stuff like that.
Maybe this one? No, this one's not
kind of
gonna
like
help.
that.
kind of, but this one's going to be continuous because they both reach -2. Well, let's see what happens. If I don't address it here, then maybe we'll go into the video. If you can pull the video up, then we'll see the actual function.
I have it's f x equal to like x plus 1.
Okay. Let's do this one first, because this one's a little more advanced.
Okay.
So we'll do this one, and then we'll address this one. So first I have to graph my piecewise function. We've practiced graphing these in a couple earlier chapters. We're going to do them a whole lot more here. So I've got the function 2x plus 1 if x is less than or equal to -2. So let's start with -2. If I plug a -2 in for x, what value am I going to get out? 6, right? Because 2 times -2 gives me a -4, plus 10 gives me a positive 6. So when x equals -2, I get y is positive 6. So I'll call this top one my blue line. I'll do the bottom one in a different color. So now this says that x is less than or equal to, so do I have a closed or open circle here? Closed because I have the equal sign. So I'll just make sure that we realize that one is closed. So now if I say, okay, x is less than -2, so now let's try -3. So I plug -3 into the graph, what am I going to get back? Positive 4. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then it's going to continue on this path, right, because it's just a line with a slope of 2. And then I'll do my best. So we get that line starting when x is less than or equal to -2. Now let's do the other one. The other one we're also going to start at -2, but here I'm going to have an open circle for whatever value I get, right? Because it cannot equal -2. So if I plug a -2 into here, what do I get back?
That's
the first one.
Positive 6,
Wait.
right? Because -2 makes it a positive 2, plus 4 is 6.
Can you not put in -2 is not equal to? No, it's greater to?
Wait, what's that?
It says,
Since it's
x is only greater than -2, can you
Right.
can't put -2 in.
Okay, we're going to plug -2 in to see what value we get, but we're going to put an open circle because we know it can't touch that.
Okay.
So we want to graph that point because something's happening at -2. Right, so we're going to see what happens. So at -2, when x equals -2, I get the same value of 6, but this one can't touch that point. Right, that way we still have a function because we passed the vertical line test. Right, if this one also equaled -2, well, I could have two different points here, and then it wouldn't pass the vertical line test, we wouldn't have a function anymore. And we'll address that more when we get to the next example. So now, let's plug in values greater than -2. So I'll plug in 1, -1. So -1 is going to give me a positive 1, plus 4 is 5. So -1, 5. And then this is also just a line with a slope of -1. And a y-intercept of 4, so it checks. So then from that point on, we are defined. Now let's answer some questions. The limit as x approaches -2 from the negative side, what value am I approaching? 6. The limit as x approaches -2 from the positive side, what value am I approaching?
6.
Okay, so since from the negative side and the positive side I equal the same value, my limit is defined and it's 6.
But on our notes it says like 6, no limit. It said
That's what it does have a limit.
Hmm?
It says it just explains why it has a limit, but.
Right, I'm explaining why it has a limit on the notes. So I still gave you 6, and then I gave you a little explanation why. Does that make sense? So if the negative side and the positive side line up at the same point, then we do have a limit, in this case 6. So the next one we had a question about. they gave us a piecewise function, and this was in the notes, so let's see. They tell us f of x equals the piecewise function x plus 1 when x is less than -3. Then they say f of x is just equal to 5, so just the point 5, -3 to 0.
Then it's x squared for 0 to
Greater than 0.
yeah.
Okay, so we've got 3 different parts we have to graph here. Again, I'll do them in different colors so we can keep track of them. The first one, when x is less than -3. So let's start at -3 and we'll work from there. So when x is -3, what value do I get for the top one? -2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Do I have a closed or an open circle at that point? Open because there's no equal sign. So I'm going to do an open circle like that. We know that the point does not actually, the line does not actually touch that point at -3.
Shouldn't that be below? Shouldn't that be below the line for -2? You put it.
No. Because that point, we're going to reach every point except for that exact point, -3, -2. So I have to circle that exact point. Because -3.111111 will work. -3.000001 will work. Just when I put -3, it doesn't work. So it has to actually be on that point.
Yeah, but that's -3 positive 2.
Oh, I'm sorry, we got a -2. I see what you're saying. -3, -2. Okay, gotcha. Now, -4 is going to give us -3. Now we're actually including these points. So we've graphed the top one. We don't want to be black and swatch. When x equals -3, all the way until x equals 0, we're just going to get the horizontal line y equals 5. So when x equals -3, now we do get a positive 5. And do I have a closed or open circle here now? Closed because I have an equal sign. So all the way from -3 to 0, it's just going to equal 5. And then at 0, I again have a closed circle because it equals 0. It can equal 0. And then when x is greater than 0, I get the function x squared. So let's do this one in...
That was parabola.
Right, that one's a parabola. Exactly. So it's going to be like the right half of a parabola. So when x equals 0, well, 0 squared is 0. So I'm going to have an open circle at 0, 0. Next, when x equals 1, I get 1. X equals 2, I get 4. And then x equals 3 would be 9, but it's not going to fit, so I'll do my best to draw a parabola here. Okay, so this is my piecewise function with these 3 different functions part of it. Now, what we talked about before, why I have open and closed circles, right? So here, if this were a closed circle, I wouldn't have a function anymore, right? Because this x value at -3 would give me 5 and -2. So it wouldn't be a function. That's why we have to have these open circles in conjunction with the closed circles. Now let's answer some questions. Did they give us?
It's later on.
Right. They want... I mean, I'm sure it's... Well, how about, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be based around -3 and 0. So how about if I said limit as f as x approaches -3. So if I approach -3 from the negative side, what value am I approaching? -2. So as I approach -3 from the negative side, I'm going to be at -2. As I approach -3 from the positive side, what value am I approaching?
0.
I'm approaching 5. So from the negative side, I'm approaching -2. From the positive side, I'm approaching 5. Does not exist at -3.
I don't get how you're approaching 5.
Okay, you don't get how I'm approaching. So as I'm approaching x equals -3 from the positive side, right? This is the positive side of my -3.
So you're going from the arrow.
So I'm going towards -3 from the positive, right? This is my positive side. These are my positive numbers. So from my positive numbers, as I'm approaching -3, I'm going to approach 5. From the negative side, as I approach -3, so my negative numbers, I'm approaching -2.